Okay, so on to the next team. So this is my 12th ranked team, also known as Team Auto Draft, also known as Team Tight End. So this is Lauren's team. Yeah, 3 years in a row to start her fantasy career with us. 3 years in a row, Lauren has not finished a draft with us. So, not getting better. Auto draft is not getting better for her. So number 4 overall, $15. Josh Allen. So Josh Allen is a favorite of Lauren's. Auto draft did something properly, I suppose. Josh Allen was the number 1 fantasy quarterback last year. Josh Allen ran for 15 touchdowns, which was part of the reason why. So he had 524 yards rushing. He had another 4,300 yards passing with 29 passing touchdowns, the 15 rushing touchdowns, and 18 interceptions. Goodness me. That's a lot of interceptions. But yeah, he was averaging 24.7 fantasy points a game, which was best among quarterbacks. Now he's lost Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, and his coordinator that he got halfway through last year is former LSU offensive coordinator for Joe Burrow, Joe Brady. And you would think, oh, well, they want to pass the ball more. It's like, no. Sean McDermott calls the shots in this offense, and they want to run the ball more. So I guess that might be where we're headed. I'm not really excited about it, but they don't have a whole lot of talent. I mean, they replaced Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis with Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel, so quite the precipitous drop down in talent. Yeah, he's probably going to have some regression. I don't think he's going to have 15 rushing touchdowns. I mean, that's a lot of rushing touchdowns. I think that was only bested by Jalen Hurts last year. No, Jalen Hurts also had 15 rushing touchdowns last year. But that's a lot of rushing touchdowns for a quarterback. So he is the red zone guy, but 15 rushing touchdowns. I mean, he had 44 touchdowns on the season combined. Like, I don't think we're gonna get that again. I think he's gonna have lower passing numbers, so 3,700 yards, probably like 25 touchdowns, and maybe like 10 rushing touchdowns, so like 30 to 35 touchdowns total seems right. I think he'll have less turnovers or less interceptions. I didn't even mention the fumbles, but I think he'll have like maybe like 14 interceptions rather than 18, so a little less. He still loves to throw the ball like into coverage. He still make mistakes like that. He just excuse me. He'll still take his chances, and especially with the receiving core, he definitely will have to. So we'll see if things get better. But I think going into his 7th year, this is one of the least talented offensive teams in the NFL. Which is hard to say about Buffalo, but the offensive line's not great. The wide receivers aren't great. James Cook is all right at running back, but there's not a whole lot of talent here other than Josh Allen. I mean, if you took Josh Allen out and you kind of tossed in, I don't know, like Jared Goff, they'd be freaking horrible. So that's how much they're missing in Buffalo. Number 7 overall, $61, CeeDee Lamb. So this was Leyland's pick last year. He was the number 1 fantasy receiver last year. He had 337 fantasy points, so not too, in the same realm as Christian McCaffrey, but that was on 135 receptions for over 1,749 receiving yards, which is a lot, plus another 113 yards rushing. I don't think we're going to get that again. Like, that's a Michael Thomas in his prime kind of season, when Michael Thomas led the league with like 143 catches one year. 135 catches is a lot. Like, that means the whole offense is you, essentially. Like, Tony Pollard was gone, Michael Gallup was bad, Dalton Schultz was gone. So, is he still the whole offense in Dallas? Yeah, but 1,700-yard seasons are, like, crazy. I think he'll have a 1,400-yard season. I think he'll have another, maybe 50 yards rushing, and I think he'll get, 10 touchdowns, which is solidly a number 1 wide receiver. You paid for him, AutoDraft paid for him at cost. This is exactly around what he's worth. He's probably, if you really want to bid it up, like a $65 player. But $61 for him is a really good deal, especially at elite wide receiver. But yeah, I don't think you're going to get like the season he had last year. Last year was just a perfect confluence of events. 11 overall, $56 on Puka Nacua. So I picked up Puka Nacua last year for free. He also had a 1,400 yard season, almost 1,500 yards, so broke the rookie record for most receiving yards. He only had 6 touchdowns, though, on the season. So he was like just crazy rookie, incredible season. Like led the Rams in routes, targets, catches, yards. He was great after the catch. I think he had 639 yards receiving after the catch. So almost like half of his yards were after the catch. His volume went a little bit down once Cooper Kupp returned, but he continued to receive like a lot of like passes. What I mean by his volume was like without Kupp, he was getting like there was a game against San Francisco, he got 15 passes. So he was averaging around like 8 or 9 passes a game. Once Kupp came back essentially and was right, he was averaging only about like 5 receptions a game, but he was still getting a lot of like yards. So I mean, there was a game in the playoffs he had 164 yards for me, and he was great. I think he's a solid number 1 wide receiver. I think given Kupp's age and injury history, missing 13 games the last 2 seasons combined, I think it's Nakua's offense now. I don't know if he'll have quite the same level of production that he had last year because Kupp is now there, but I think he'll still be a 1,200 yard receiver with like seven touchdowns, maybe not 105 receptions either, maybe like 90, so 15 less receptions. But he's an incredible player. He's really, really good in space. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. His injury history is why he fell in the draft anyway. But he was the number 4 fantasy wide receiver last year, and you're basically paying for him at cost of what he was last year. You got the number 1 fantasy receiver, you got the number 4 fantasy receiver, you got him for $56. So I like Puka Nacua. He was on my team. I think he's great. You're paying for what he's worth, essentially. And then 21 overall, $51, Garrett Wilson. So we are just tripling down on wide receiver is what AutoDraft decided. So we're hoping for a breakout season with Garrett Wilson. Among the 3 of them, last year was CeeDee Lamb's breakout season. It was also Puka Nacua's. We're still waiting for Garrett Wilson to have the breakout season. It kind of fell apart immediately because Aaron Rodgers got hurt in the 4th snap last year. He still broke the Jets record for most receiving yards in the first 2 seasons combined. I think he had like 1,900 essentially. But we need him to be basically like a star level player. Last year he was the 29th fantasy wide receiver, and considering we're paying him $51, he needs to be a top 7, top 5 fantasy receiver. I think he can maybe get there. I think he'll get like around 1,150, 1,200 yards, so around Puka Nacua yardage. Less receptions, probably like, I don't know, 80, 85. But he'll get more touchdowns. If Rodgers stays healthy, he'll get his 10 touchdowns. And that'll really be a big, big difference. That'll put him in like a solid like wide receiver 1 kind of range. Would I rather have like Devontae Adams and Brandon Ayuk or like a bunch of other receivers combined over having Garrett Wilson? Probably, because we haven't seen him do it before. We don't really know what to make of the Jets offense. And basically everyone's projecting, the Jets are going to be great because Aaron Rodgers is there. And we remember MVP Aaron Rodgers. It was a while ago. Last year he tore his Achilles. Year before that in Green Bay, he wasn't that good. And also, the coaching staff's not great. Nathaniel Hackett couldn't hack it in Denver after insisting on trading for Russell Wilson. They were terrible 2 years ago. So, not great. Not a big fan of coaching staff either. we just think, oh, Aaron Rodgers there, everything's going to magically be better. He's 40. So, yeah, I hate to throw cold water on this, but I think Wilson's good. I think they'll try and feed him more because he's the number one, but he's got competition for targets. Mike Williams is there. Mike Williams is a good player too. And Breece Hall's there. Breece Hall's a good player too. And it's just, there's always something amiss with the Jets. I don't know how to describe it other than that. It's like they're cursed or something. They can't ever get anything right. I mean, we draft Sam Darnold, number 2 overall, or number 3 overall. We draft Zach Wilson, number 2 overall, and it fails. They both fail. They both look terrible. Just genuinely awful players. And they just flounder around, and they haven't been to the playoffs in 14 years. Maybe this is the year with Aaron Rodgers. But all of that's to say, you're paying for what you think Garrett Wilson can be, and I'm not truly sure he can be that. I'd rather have taken chances on a guy like DK Metcalf breaking out than Wilson, because other than Aaron Rodgers, the circumstances are murky at best. I guess the offensive line's good, but yeah, we spent a lot of money on our first 4 picks, because that's what AutoDraft likes to do. It likes to spend money and not really have any sort of like reckoning on, budgeting, using our time wisely, trying to build a complete roster. None of those things really matter to AutoDraft. AutoDraft's just like, deal. That guy's worth a little bit less than what he is. Sure, I'll throw money at him. I'm sure it'll work out, and it doesn't really work out. So, just doing some quick math here. Just going to count up how much cash was spent on the first 4 picks for Warren. So yeah, AutoDraft, between the first 4 players of Josh Allen, CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, and Garrett Wilson, used $183 on a $200 budget. It left literally $17 left. Like, that is terrible. So, yeah, whenever you wonder about what kind of team you'll have based off AutoDraft, basically it'll be AutoDraft spending a ton of money on a player that basically every other team is just like, that seems like a lot of money. And then just kind of sitting on dollar bills and throwing them at tight ends and hoping they can get them, because it loves them some tight ends. So, $119, $1, Dalton Kincaid. I actually liked this pick. This might have been the only dollar pick that I liked by AutoDraft. I had mentioned before, there's Keon Coleman, there is James Cook, there is Curtis Samuel, and I don't have a lot of hope for the Buffalo passing offense. The hope relies, I guess you could say, on the 2 tight ends, which is Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. So he split basically snaps with Dawson Knox halfway through the year, but once Knox got injured, Kincaid took off. He led the team in targets while Knox was hurt from weeks 8 through 12 with 37 targets, and that helped frustrate Stephon Diggs, which led to him later being traded. He might lead the team in targets. He might be the most talented offensive pass catcher on the team, more so than Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir. So I could see Dalton Kincaid having a good season. I could see him pushing to be a top 5 fantasy tight end. I could see him having 75 receptions, we'll say 800 yards, and like 5 or 6 touchdowns, which is pretty good. That's pretty solid. That is basically a low-end, like, flex kind of player, and that's what you're paying him for, to be a flex player. So, in the grand scheme of things, getting him added for $1 to be a starter is good. But you'll notice we've filled quarterback, wide receiver, 1 wide receiver tight end slot, another wide receiver tight end slot, and the flex slot. You know what we haven't filled? Running back. So, I mean, we can kind of like skip on through here. There's a lot of picks. We'll just go with the picks that are still on your team. So $204 overall, $1 for Ray Davis. We're really leaning into Buffalo. So we have Josh Allen, we have Dalton Kincaid, Now we have the backup running back in Ray Davis. So he was drafted in the 4th round, a few picks after Bucky Irving went to the Bucs. He rushed for over 1,100 yards for Kentucky last year, and he's more of a big bruising back. I think he'll be a good number 2 backup, but he reminds me a lot of like Devin Singletary coming out of the draft, and we know kind of how that worked. Buffalo wasn't really happy with Devin Singletary, and then replaced him with Zach Moss, and then replaced both of them with James Cook, and so here we are. I think Davis is a good handcuff. I think Davis has a lot of upside to possibly even take that job if they're unhappy with Cook. This will probably be more of a rushing offense with Josh Allen than anything else, but Davis had a very good year at the University of Kentucky. He showed a lot of talent. I don't know if he can be good enough to start in the NFL as of yet, but for now, I'll say like 400 yards rushing and maybe like 100 yards receiving. But you're really just waiting to see, like, can he cut into some of James Cook's workload? Will he usurp James Cook as a starter? I don't know. Davis was a good player, but I don't think he was a great player. Cook has the better pedigree and has been in the league longer. But Davis might be the goal line back if they go away from Josh Allen being the goal line back. And that's something, I guess. I mean, you basically had, like, no running backs. I mean, earlier in this draft, right after Kincaid at 157, you spent $2 on Brock Purdy. But it does you no good to have a backup quarterback because you have no running backs. It drafted Kendre Miller at 174. He's hurt, so that didn't help you either. Let's see, 218, $1, Dallas Goedert at tight end. So another tight end. Like I said, team tight end is auto draft. So Goddard, just like Josh Allen, is going into his seventh season. Ever since he replaced Zach Ertz as the starting tight end in Philly, he's kind of just been like on an upward trend. He's had a hard time finding chemistry with Jalen Hurts, I will say that. He's like a borderline top 10 tight end-ish because there's been a lot of like tight ends who have surpassed him. Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride. There's just a lot of better tight ends now. So he might be a startable player in our league as like a low-end flex, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Maybe he'll get like 65 receptions and like 650 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns. But he's like a very distant 4th option in the Philadelphia Eagles offense. And I wouldn't really have any sort of belief that. I mean, last year he was the 15th best fantasy tight end, and that's basically where I have him. I don't have a lot of hope that he'll be better than that. $2.23, $1, Brandon Cooks. So CeeDee Lamb's number 2 guy, Brandon Cooks. He was barely like a top 50 receiver last year. So he also did not break 1,000 yards after having a streak of like 6 seasons with 1,000 yards against like for 4 other franchises. Like he went from like New Orleans to New England to the Rams and then to the Cowboys, I think. So he wasn't great. I mean, the Cowboys throw a lot, which is what made Dak Prescott be a top 5 fantasy quarterback and CeeDee Lamb the number 1 fantasy wide receiver. But I don't really see Cooks as anything more than like a wide receiver 4 kind of player. Basically, you would start him if CeeDee Lamb was hurt kind of thing. But he's not. He's basically like what Goddard is, which is like we're saying like 60 receptions, maybe 650 yards, and like 5 touchdowns. It's not great. It's really basically free agency worthy kind of player. I guess you could keep him in case something happens to CeeDee Lamb, I suppose, but he doesn't really have all that much value. We cut the rest of the team, and we've basically turned over like everything. So I guess we'll kind of like dig into that somewhat. So we picked up Antonio Gibson, which I had previously mentioned on Justin's team, who he probably ought to have traded, but he dumped him. So I mean, for you, that's a starter. I think Gibson's probably going to still receive the passing down work from the Patriots, which there might be a lot of that considering their offensive line's not great and they'll probably be behind in most games. And Jacoby Brissett is now the starter in New England again because they want to protect Drake May because, again, the offensive line's terrible. And yeah, Alex Van Pelt is now the offensive coordinator after being in Cleveland. But Gibson will be like the third down, change of pace back. He has some fancy utility. He's a pretty good pass catcher. I remember a few years ago, like Justin spent like 70 on him, and we were thinking he'd have like a Christian McCaffrey kind of breakout from Ron Rivera. It never happened. But he's still a good pass catcher. I mean, he was a wide receiver in college. I could see him getting like 500 yards rushing and 250 yards receiving and maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns. Which isn't great. That's like borderline like an RB4, borderline flex running back, but you basically drafted 2 running backs, and they were both like, well, one's hurt. One was Kendry Miller, and he was hurt, so that didn't even help you. The other was Ray Davis, who's the backup running back in Buffalo. So, yeah, auto draft just hates running backs, I guess. You also have Miles Sanders. Dave Canales came out today. It looks like it's going to be a timeshare in Carolina until Jonathan Brooks comes back. I mentioned Jonathan Brooks in Robbie's video, so I don't think Sanders has a whole lot of utility. I know they paid him last year, but Chuba Hubbard's the starter, which isn't a good sign. And then once Jonathan Brooks is healthy and ready to go, he'll probably be the number 1 because he has more talent than Sanders or Hubbard. But Sanders is quick, and he's always had the ability to, like, run away from people. I remember him being at Penn State after Saquon Barkley and starting for a year. So I think he'll get less production than last year because he's going to be in, like, a deep timeshare. You're probably cutting him once Jonathan Brooks comes back just because Brooks probably eats all of the production. But maybe 400 yards rushing, maybe 120 yards receiving, 125. We're basically just holding on to him right now, hoping that he can play somewhat with Brooks still gone for Carolina. What else? We also picked up Tyrone Tracy Jr. Oh, I like him. So Tyrone Tracy Jr., he was the 5th round pick by the Giants this year. He is Devin Singletary's backup because Devin Singletary's the starter in New York for the New York Giants now. Tracy was very good for Purdue last year as a rusher, and I think if they trust him behind Devin Singletary, it can work out. I don't think he's going to be anything more than like a 3rd down back because Singletary's not great at catching the ball. But this isn't a good offense with Daniel Jones anyway. So this is like an RB5, and maybe if something happens to Singletary, he gets the job and makes something of it. But for now, we'll just say 300 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns, maybe a handful, maybe like 20 catches receiving and 150 yards. But he's basically the handcuff to Devin Singletary, who I think is on Eileen's team. So not bad. He has talent. We want to take players who have a chance at being more, and Tracy certainly does, being a rookie. Then we picked up Deontay Foreman, who is on Cleveland, got cut when they were doing their initial. I'm so sleepy. They're doing their initial 53-man roster, but then they brought him back. I think he's going to split time with Jerome Ford until Nick Chubb comes back, kind of playing that, kind of in that timeshare that he was just in Chicago. So he is probably more the goal line back than Jerome Ford, which plays well to him. I think he'll give you like maybe 400 yards rushing and maybe like 4 or 5 touchdowns. Again, it just depends on how much time is he getting. Is he going to actually, I don't think he's starting, but if he's the goal line back, he can maybe like vulture some touchdowns in the meantime until Chubb comes back. So I like Foreman. I think he's a good player. You're just real desperate for running backs, and he'd be like a wide receiver or running back like 5 or 6 or so. After that is Jalen Tolbert, the number 3 receiver on the Cowboys. So we went super deep in the Cowboys, got their top 3 receivers. I mean, I don't think Tolbert's going to do a whole lot. He only caught 22 passes last year. Maybe now that he's the number 3, he catches like 40. So doubles that up and maybe like 550 yards receiving. But that's not a startable fantasy player. And frankly, between Brooks and Tolbert, as long as CeeDee Lamb is healthy, I'd get rid of at least one of them, probably Tolbert, because he's like the slot man. He hasn't done anything, and I don't think he's going to do anything because it's still CeeDee Lamb's offense. Finally, we get to Samaje Perine, who you picked up on free agency. So he was the pass-catching back and insurance for Javonte Williams last year. He was 14th in running back receptions, and he looked pretty good when he got his chances in Denver. Now, he's more of a pass catcher. We are just yawning a ton. He's more of a pass catcher, but with Clyde Edwards-Helaire going the physically unable to perform list and the Chiefs not having a whole lot going on, he's kind of going to slot into that Jerick McKinnon pass-catching role for the Chiefs underneath Isaiah Pacheco, and Perine has been really successful there in the last few years. So there's a possibility that he takes more passing down work with Pacheco, get some red zone coverage. So I don't believe this is a bad bet to take Perine here. All in all, I have you 12 because you have no real starting running backs. Autodraft truly went RB0 and literally drafted 2 running backs for you in the whole entire draft. And one of them you couldn't even use because Kendry Miller was injured. So, which is crazy. I just want to stress again, this is the importance of coming to the draft. Autodraft is not your friend. Autodraft does not believe in you. Autodraft does you no favors. People might say there's a lot of things in fantasy and it's a lot of luck. Well, Autodraft doesn't believe in luck. Autodraft believes in just knifing you in the back. So just be prepared for that because they don't care. Autodraft is like a honey badger. It don't give a damn. So it's just going to do whatever it wants, which is collect tight ends. And that's what it did. It collected quite a few tight ends. I think for Lauren this year, it drafted 1, 2, 3, 4 tight ends and a second defensive tackle. So pretty close to last year getting 5. So yeah, it's going to be an upward climb for you, Lauren. I mean, you basically need to hit on some sort of running back like Kyron Williams or something. Not even a Kyron Williams level running back. Just a starting level running back would be so very helpful for you because if the wide receivers, I think Allen will be good. I think Lamb will be good. I think Nakua will be good. It's really a question of Wilson. If Wilson can reach his potential and join them, then, we might have something cooking here. We might be able to get away with not having running backs for some games, but you're going to just genuinely need everyone to be healthy because you have no bench, you have no depth. Once injuries start coming, maybe one of those running backs on your bench becomes more than what he currently is and takes a starting job. We're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. But yeah, this was not a good time for Lauren. We were watching the draft and it's like, oh my god, Autodraft's so stupid. It's not taking any running backs. I was lamenting how bad it was at not taking any running backs. It refused to take any running backs. And it would just stubbornly try and spend all of its money almost immediately. And I'm just like, why? For what? Let's say Garrett Wilson's worth to being we'll say Garrett Wilson is worth a $60 player. What's it worth, Autodraft, to spend $51 on him when it has, no running backs? You could just get, I don't know, throw Tank Dell in there for $11 and then get Devin Singletary for $4. That would be Devin Singletary went for $5, my mistake. And Ezekiel Elliott went for $3. That would be the utmost helpful thing to be on this team because of the level of receivers it has. If it just had any running back with a pulse, it could have been super helpful. But Autodraft don't believe in that. Autodraft just does not give a crap. So this is tough. You're going to have a tough season. You're going to have to dig for wide receiver. Well, at least last year you were digging for wide receivers. This year you're not digging for wide receivers. You're digging for running backs. As injuries come, maybe you'll hit on one, but it's gonna be tough. Just again highlights the importance of the draft. You can't. The draft might not win you a championship, but it can definitely lose you one, and it's put you behind the 8 ball here, and that's tough to deal with. But I guess that's fantasy football. So good luck, Lauren. I think you're starting to figure it out, though. You're doing a lot of good moves to get as many running backs as you can. So eventually, at some point, hopefully one of them hits, and then you can kind of go from there. But for now, we'll see if you can magic your way into the playoffs for a third straight season. Yeah,